It is 2 o'clock. We are going to start. If everyone could please find a seat, and we will begin. Hi, thank you so much for spending a beautiful, sunny Saturday inside the beautiful Royal Room to join us. I am Florangela Davila, the Executive Director of the South Seattle Emerald, and I am so happy. Thank you. I am really happy to be here in partnership with the Royal Room to be able to host this civic conversation. This is going to be part policy talk and part job interview, because this is what the race is all about, to be the key leader of our city. So, not going to spend any more time saying hello, and I am here with Mike Davis. You all probably know him as the editor and writer of our weekly newsletter called The Roundup, which you have to subscribe to, please. And he's also the editor of our Voices section. So we'll begin. We have an hour. We have a lot to cover. We're encouraging a respectful and informative conversation, and we'll begin. Bruce Harrell grew up in the Central District, the son of a black man and a Japanese mother. His mother and family were incarcerated during World War II. Dad worked for City Light. Mom was a librarian. He graduated from Garfield. He played football at the UW and worked as a lawyer. He has served on the Seattle City Council twice. He was elected to mayor in 2021, Mayor Bruce Harrell.
First and foremost, hello, and thanks for coming. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I am going to introduce Katie Wilson. Katie is the co-founder and executive director of the Transit Writers Union. She's from Binghamton, New York. Did I pronounce that? She studied at Oxford, and she moved to Seattle in 2004. All right, my first question is for Mayor Harrell. Just straight up, A, B, C, how would you grade your first term as mayor?
Yeah, I appreciate everyone being here, number one, and thanks for the question, Mike. So I appreciate the question, but I don't grade myself. I just don't do that. That's sort of, in all due respect, sort of a silly exercise, because I know I can get better. I know I can do better. That's my life philosophy. And ultimately, after 16 years of being elected in this city, you judge me. I've been judged my entire life. I've been discriminated against my entire life, prejudged my entire life. So I'm going to pass on that question, and with a spirit of humility, we'll keep serving as long as you'll have me. So that's my grade.
And I think the applause is great, but it's going to eat up our time, so just we'll be mindful of that. Please. Katie Wilson, what are the 3 key essential skills that you have that make you qualified for the job?
This is a great question. I would say, I've been talking a lot on this campaign about how I'm a community organizer. And to me, that means listening. So I've spent the last 14 years listening to residents, to renters, to homeowners, to transit riders, to communities around the city. And I know that I don't know everyone, but I am here to listen. And so I think that is one quality that I will bring with me. Another is I bring people together, right? I'm a coalition builder. So all of the work that I've done over the years it's not one person, right? It's not one organization. It's bringing together many people, many organizations around a common vision. And I will continue doing that. So bringing people together. And finally, I'll just say vision, right? And I think that part of why I decided to run for office was a perception of the moment that we're in and the kind of leadership that's needed in this moment and the struggles that people are facing on the ground. And so and I think that that's informed a lot of the work that I've done over the years, is being able to see that moment that we're in, and what is that problem that people are facing, and what is the solution that we can work forward toward together.
This question is going to be for both of you. I'll go to Mayor Harold first, and this question is from a South Seattle Emerald reader, so thank you. How do you plan to address affordability for working class residents who don't qualify for government assistance but are still struggling to live in the city?
So let's talk about affordability in Seattle. So first of all, I think many of you know I've lived through it. The first house I bought with a roommate was about $80,000, but I was making about $35,000, $40,000 at the time. So it's usually about 2 times your income back in affordable Seattle. Now, of course, we know a house is about 9 to 10 times your income. So our income is not kept up with the cost of a house. So what do we do about that? And like I said, by the way, I'm coming from the Husky game. I'm sort of peeking at the score a little bit, a 7-3. So I'm present, but I have to tell you, we were winning before I left, and so I got to stay present here. What are we going to do about it? I will take a lot of blame, but I cannot take the blame for the unaffordability of a house. But I will take responsibility to do everything we can. So what do? We passed the most aggressive housing levy we could, $970 million, let's call it $1 billion. Under our administration, we put over $1 billion in affordable housing, and we put the city in a position to do $1 billion more. In our current budget, $350 million, that's an unprecedented amount. We can cut the red tape. So you look at the Quarteria project in the University Village near Burgermaster, where that used to be. 800 units, 200 of which will be income restricted, as one example. Fort Lawton, 500 units. We're cutting the red tape, removing the design review and the permit processes in such a way that we can cut down the time in 2 years. I'm throwing the kitchen sink on this issue because my mom and dad would not, my parents were not rich people. They didn't go to college. And so I've done everything a mayor can do to make it more affordable because I want people like my mom and dad, who are a young couple at Garfield, to be able to live in this city. And if any of you have, including my opponent, a better idea in what we could do, we will take it, because I hired a person from the community to head up our Office of Housing. And so our best ideas come from the community. But by the way, I've been working on this for 30 years. I used to do real estate investment trusts known as REITs for tax credit deals. I represented Mount Zion Housing Corporation, First ME Housing Corporation. I know housing policy. It is a tough issue, Seattleites, a tough issue, but you have a mayor that's doing everything possible to keep it affordable, particularly for young couples that we want to live here in the 4th fastest growing city in the country.
Would you like me? You want me to reread the question for you?
Sure.
How do you plan to address affordability for working class residents who don't qualify for government assistance but are still struggling?
Yeah, I think this is a very, very important question, because the way that we often do programs in the United States is we create these kind of poverty cliffs where if you're at a certain income level, then you qualify for assistance, but then the moment you get above that income threshold, suddenly you don't have anything. So maybe you're living in an affordable housing unit, and now you get a better job or you get a second job, and now you don't qualify anymore and you have to move out. So this is really kind of like a broken way to do things. And I would say, just to pick 2 particular areas, right? Housing and childcare. So housing, we need to address housing affordability across the spectrum, because it's not just the poorest of the poor who are struggling with the cost of housing. One way we do that is through our land use and zoning laws, right? And so that is making sure that the private market can build more housing across the city, including that kind of middle housing that's not going to naturally be affordable for the lowest income households, but for more middle income households, that's going to create some affordability. I think social housing is another big part of the answer for this, because the way that we're designing this social housing developer is it's designed to create housing for kind of a spectrum of incomes up to 120% AMI, which is a higher income threshold than is generally eligible for subsidized housing. And the reason that model works in so many cities around the world, is that you have this kind of cross-subsidy of rents going on within the social housing sector. So that's another way that the city can create affordability for folks who don't qualify for more traditional affordable housing programs. and also investing in affordable homeownership. There's a whole bunch of things we need to do. On childcare, I think there's kind of a similar conversation, right? Because Seattle and King County, right, we do have childcare subsidy programs, but they really are for kind of the lowest income households, and there's so many households who don't qualify for those programs who are still struggling mightily with the cost of childcare. And so one thing I want to look at is how the city can not only step up and provide more subsidy and work at the state level to get a state level solution, but also how can we kind of open the pipeline for more child care facilities being started, make it easier, more affordable for people to start in-home child care facilities, child care centers, in a way that will make more child care available and also bring down the cost and help with siting, right? Like, why don't we have more child care downtown? If we're expecting working parents to come to the office, like, we need to provide that. So I think there's a lot we can do that kind of helps with people all across the income scale so they can afford those basic things like housing and child care.
2:11, time check. You both have said you support social housing, so how are you going to pay for it? Briefly. Mayor Harrell.
Well, what we've done thus far, and just for the record, because people are saying I never supported or didn't support social housing, we've always supported it. What we looked at, and you have to understand that what we looked at was the existing, the issue was how are we going to pay for it? I think in a high-tech sector, for example, there's 46,000 jobs that we just left, and that's about 40% of our workforce, and we want to keep jobs here. So what we did first was we advanced $800,000 to make sure they can succeed and get the administrative offices and all the strategic plans together. We then fronted with a $2 million loan, a very competitive loan such that they can succeed. Then after that, of course, they are paid for by the tax, by the payroll expense tax, and so they have a sustainable funding stream, and my opponent is absolutely right. This is one means to reach a certain demographic, and it has worked in several areas. It's an untested model here, but we also have to understand that we have a lot of affordable housing out there that are hurting because they have vacancies, and that's why I've recently issued $170 million to stabilize the existing housing, because remember when we went through COVID, we used a lot of one-time funding. So in the housing levy, we also have $9 million in there to keep people in, money in there to keep 9,000 people in their house so they don't become homeless. So they have a sustainable revenue stream. That is a good thing, and the city's done everything possible to make sure they succeeded under my leadership.
Yeah, so as many of you know, probably social housing and the initiative back in February was one of the reasons why I got into this race, because I think it is so important that our new social housing developer has strong leadership, strong partnership from the mayor's office as it gets rolling. And I know that the social housing developer is now looking at acquiring a first property, which is really, really exciting. So we do have a funding stream now, right, which I think is expected to be around $50 million a year that was voted on in a landslide in February. And in terms of how the city can help to make sure that that money goes as far as possible, I think there's a real active role that the city can take in helping to identify sites, identify buildings for acquisition by the social housing developer, and I want the city to play that role. And of course, in easing the permitting processes, making sure that all the kind of steps that have to be taken before a property can be renovated or developed, that those go as fast and seamlessly as possible. Potentially land banking, right? So acquiring land or buildings like before the social housing developer is ready to actually do something with them. And so I think the city can do all of these things. In terms of financing, the other thing I would like to explore is whether the city can use its bonding capacity. And this might mean bonding against that $50 million revenue stream, but we should also look at whether we can do some of it with revenue bonds, right? Because again, this model means that there will be significant rental income coming in from these units once they're filled. So can we bond against future rents and get some upfront financing that way to accelerate the expansion of this sector? So I think there's a number of things that we can look at. And it's not a totally untested model here, right? So if you look at the way that the King County Housing Authority has operated, they have sometimes done basically revenue bonds to fund some of their developments, and they have some mixed income developments that are a lot like social housing. So there are examples right here locally that we can look at, and just developing those partnerships with Seattle Housing Authority, other entities. I think there's a lot of work there to make this thing successful, and I really want the mayor's office to be taking a lead on that work.
Thank you. This question is for Mayor Harrell.
I would just add that a lot of what you described cannot be done legally, but that's another issue.
I want to ask you about keeping our streets safe.
Safe.
Yes, keeping our streets safe. We know that you plan to hire more officers. We get that, but outside of hiring more officers, what can you do to help keep our streets safe?
Outside of getting good officers that can get out of their cars, get to know the community, hire from this community to make sure that they love our community, what else can we do? And because you took out a strong portion of that. We are the largest city to have an unarmed response. That is in the care department that in my budget we will double its capacity. That is new modern policing. We will continue to invest in community-based organizations, people that know these streets and know these communities perhaps better than you and I. These are the organizations that are preventing lives from being taken. And quite frankly, for those, Florangela, you said this is a lovely place we're in, and indeed it is. But my work in this community to keep it safe spans quite some years. This place wouldn't be here if I had not have renegotiated the lease here, saved the Royal Esquire Club that owns this place, because business activation, having vibrancy, is a means of economic development and public safety. These names you walked past over here, George Floyd, John T. Williams, Sandra Bland, I commissioned that to say to all of you, their lives were taken. Safety is more than cops. It's economic development. It's education in our kids. And we have an opportunity on the ballot during the negotiated Families and Ed levy. You talk about child care and pre-K spots. Education is a public safety tool. A lot of these people committing crimes are walking around with untreated trauma. They have broken relationships in their life. My goal, my charter responsibility is to protect the community. And I know my opponent has walked back her position on defunding the police and all that stuff. That's cool, I get that. But you have to have a North Star. You know, I'm not the politician that changes their mind. My North Star is clear. Protect people. My wife is here, she's known me since I was 18 years old. I've talked about protecting our community when I was 18. That's how we protect it, with an integrated response, always based on empathy, love, faith, and hard work. That's how we protect the community.
Katie, same question. I can reread it. Outside of hiring more officers, how can you keep our streets safe?
Yeah, so this is a really great question, and as I've been campaigning around the city over the last 7 or 8 months and talking with folks in neighborhoods around the city, it's clear that we have a long way to go before everyone in our communities feels safe and is safe. So I'll say a few things. Mayor Harrell said that Seattle's the largest city to have an unarmed police response. I'm not sure if that's true, but we're certainly not the city that has the largest unarmed police response. And so there are other cities around the country that have gone a lot further than Seattle in the range of kinds of crisis calls that their unarmed responders can respond to, and also in making sure that those responders can respond independently of the police so that there's not always officers there at the same time. So I think we need to continue to work on that. And it is also about kind of the models of policing that we use. And you know, I've heard from so many people, including officers, right, about how we need to move toward more of a community policing model where, as Mayor Harrell said, I agree with this, but if after 4 years we're not doing it, that officers should be, as much as possible, hired from the communities that they're going to serve and have those relationships, be out on the street, talking to business owners, talking to service providers, and really taking that problem-solving approach to public safety issues in the neighborhood, as opposed to just reacting when there's a call. Another thing I'll say is that our approach to violence prevention and gun violence prevention, you know, there was an audit last year which basically showed that the city has not been following best practices when it comes to our models of violence prevention, and doesn't have this kind of evidence-based strategic framework. So that is something that we really need to work on. And the other thing I'll say is just a meaningful response to our homelessness crisis will go so far to addressing our public safety problems. We cannot have thousands of people sleeping outside with nowhere to go, often with, you know, complex issues related to substance use disorder and mental illness. We're just not going to have a safe city as long as people are desperate and their needs aren't being met.
I have a yes/no question. Do you support police officers in schools?
Yes, if the kids
Yes, no.
want it, yes. But I'm not going to force it on anyone.
Complex issue, but at this point, no.
How do you draw the line between adequate policing and over-policing? Mayor Harrell.
Can I go
Mayor
second
Harrell.
on one of these questions, possibly? Maybe the second half, I could go second. So, no, I'm just having fun with it. I got to have fun because we're still behind 7-3.
Thanks for showing up.
Yes. Thank you for showing up.
The line,
Thank you for showing up.
the line between adequate policing.
I've been in this area for 50 years, by the way, so I'm always in this area. Let me ask the question. First of all, you have to use best practices. You have to understand criminology. The proper ratio should be about 1.9 per 1,000 people. That would get us about 1,500 officers, the right kind of officers. I have a background of cross-examining police officers. I know this space quite well. So over-policing could be measured, and that's exactly how we terminated the consent decree. If you may recall, when I was in office, when we had a consent decree, 1 out of every 5 stops was unreasonable force. We used unreasonable force, that's 20%. Right now, it's less than 1%. That's how you measure it. And you know you are over-policing when you are racial profiling, policing with bias. I authored the anti-racial profiling law for the city, the first one, and created a cause of action such that if people are discriminated based on a demographic, they can sue the city of Seattle. I created a cause of action against the city of Seattle when I was on the city council. So to answer your question, ma'am, I take this extremely seriously because it's been my life experience. I grew up in the Central District in a red-lined area where we were over-policed, and my friends went to jail for simply having a joint. And I don't know your experiences in this, but I know mine. So the balance could be used at looking at math, looking at the laws that are enforced, and making sure you're calibrating, make sure the community is protected.
Katie Wilson.
Yeah, so for me, this comes down to what are the results that we want to get on the ground for people, right? And so one of those results is that if you're the victim of a crime or you're in a dangerous situation and you call for the police, they should come in a timely manner. Another result is that if there is a situation that requires a response, but where the police are not the best responder or even a helpful responder and maybe a harmful responder, that everyone knows who to call, right? And if that's 911, then there's an alternative route that gets you to a different kind of responder, a mental health professional, a social worker, or if that's calling another number, right? Right now, as I'm talking to people, when they encounter people in crisis situations, they don't know who to call. And so we need to figure that out so that then we have that alternative response, which, we have our CARES department. There are also a number of kind of nonprofit operated teams which in some sense work like alternative response. And so we really need to work on getting that whole thing working better so that we're getting that result for people on the ground. Sorry, lost my train of thought. Sorry. Okay, maybe that's it.
Well, can we go a little deeper? The question was, what does adequate staffing look like as opposed
that's right. That
to
reminds me.
over-policing,
Okay.
right?
This is what I was
Question
getting
So
adequate
wouldn't that involve a
policing.
question of math?
So, okay.
Question, do I need to repeat the question?
Please.
Okay. Right. What is the line between adequate policing and over-policing?
Yeah, and okay, so this is the other thing I was getting to, is that when we think of over-policing, often what that means is that we are arresting people and throwing them into jail when that is not helpful for them, that is not helpful for anyone else, right? Because often what happens is people cycle through jail and then back out onto the street. And so, we have, for example, the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program, LEAD, which is a nationally recognized program which, when someone is arrested for a lower level offense, right, there is another pathway, right, where they're getting into, if they're homeless, maybe shelter, housing, with services and with the support that they need. And so we need to be investing in LEAD and similar programs that are providing that alternative pathway so that when there is a situation where we do need to arrest someone, we're not just cycling them in and out of jail. So there's all these, it's not just a number, right? And I know that Mayor Harrell cited a number of police officers per, or per population. But that's really not a hard and fast number. I mean, one of the things that I would like to see the city do is move much more strongly towards civilianizing roles that police don't need to be performing. And that's not just crisis response, but that's taking down reports of property crime, right? That's responding to non-injury traffic accidents. And we've seen other jurisdictions around the country that have successfully civilianized some of those roles, and then their police response times drop because their police can actually focus on policing. And so, that is not just about a number, right? It's about how we're actually using our police resources and what kind of policing they're doing so that we're not just arresting people unnecessarily.
Thank you.
Mayor Harrell. Promise we're not picking on you. The CCT cameras are one of the hottest topics in our city right now. You support them. There's a lot of people in the community who don't. What makes you certain that they are the right idea?
Yeah, first, let me acknowledge the opposition. I don't think the opposition is wrong on their concerns. They're worried about whether this technology could be breached. It could be used as a weapon against anyone, particularly immigrant and refugees, given the absurdity we're seeing from Trump. They're worried about overreach. I would remind everyone that I authored the privacy surveillance ordinance because of my concern about technology. And so with this technology that's used in about 300 cities, we believe adequate safeguards are in place. It's already working as we speak. Just the other day, we had an unfortunate shooting at 12th and Jackson and Capitol Hill, and we were able to use this technology to go after the bad person that did this. 28 people have access to it. It is audited on how they can use it. Most of the footage is deleted after 5 days. Okay? It's triggered with a 911 call. Now, I talked to the father and showed him the real-time crime center, the father of Amar Murphy Payne, who was killed. I talked to the mother of the young girl that was shot near Garfield Transit. I talked to the mother of the daycare center that owns the daycare center near Garfield. They support this technology because they realize that if it is misused, I will terminate it immediately. Under Keep Washington Working Act, the RCW 10 and the 10th Code, it makes it crystal clear this technology cannot be used in cooperation with the federal government. So we believe we have adequate safeguards in place. And like I said, we are trying to use this to protect people. We want first responders to be able to get out. If someone's hurt, 1 or 2 or 3 minutes can make all the time in the world. And usually on a 911 call, if someone describes someone, hey, there's this guy, he's got a blue coat on and a red cap, and they may describe a race. Right now, we are able to use analytics to know exactly who this shooter was. And so if used properly, as many cities are using, it's a good tool to retrieve evidence and get first responders there. That's why we want to try it. But I will say to everyone that even those who oppose it, I hear your concerns. I share your concerns. But we will put the right safeguards in place to make sure it's a tool to protect people, not a tool to harm anybody.
Thank you.
Another question for Mayor Harrell. Job interview,
fire.
remember? All right, a strong leader, you gotta know what you're good at, you gotta know what you're not good at. Who do you surround yourself with at the table to make sure that you're getting different perspectives, different opinions, and holding yourself accountable?
Well, number one, I'm walking diversity, right? I mean, everyone around me, sometimes I don't think there's anyone here that looks like me. That's a good thing. I have on my executive team the most diverse executive team in the city's history, both in terms of women and people of color. I hire people that have strong opinions, many of whom may disagree with me. I have been marginalized. I've been in meetings where I raised my hand in a sea of white people, and they've said, what did he say again? Or they ignored the point, and someone else will say it, and all of a sudden it's a valid point. I've watched my wife, as a black woman, navigate through this. And what we've learned is you have to have diversity in. So if you look at my cabinet, I have 3 chiefs. 2 are African-American men and 1's a woman. You look at my cabinet, my most important SDOT, a lot of you are transportation advocates, as you should be, an Ethiopian woman. Look at the woman that heads up my Office of Immigrant and Refugees, a Somali woman. So I surround myself around that because that's how I get better. I am far, far, far from perfect, but I will only go toward that route if I have people that keep me in check. And I surround myself around that, and sometimes it hurts. I may think that I'm right, and I'm very wrong. And I have a strong wife that for going on 4 decades makes sure I get that feedback, because every single day she inspires me to get better. And that's the only way I will get better, to hire that kind of diversity around me. And we modeled it. We modeled it in every hiring decision we made.
And I just have a quick follow-up. You talked about the racial diversity around the table, but clearly there is a large number of people shown in the primary results where the issues of class and affordability. So who around the table are renters living in 1-, 2-bedroom apartments, making minimum wage?
Yeah, well, I have two, well, I don't want to call them out by their specific names or anything, but we have that demographic both on my executive team and my cabinet. That's the people we hire. And if you ever sat in any of my executive meetings or in my cabinet meetings, we have those discussions. You know, people see me now in a powerful position, a very powerful position. I have 14,000 employees. It's an $8.5 billion budget. I've been struggling. I've paid, my parents were not college professors. When I moved out of the house, I could not, I was on a football scholarship. We were broke. When I was a young lawyer, I did not make a lot of money at all. So I don't have to go far to know what the struggle is. The struggle has been real for me. As I said, I'm fighting to make sure my mother and father are here. So you look at me now, you also have to know the little boy that went to Garfield that never had a lot. So I don't need to talk to everyone about that experience. All I have to do is close my eyes and remember how it felt.
But I'm just going to throw in, I understand that. You're a 62-year-old person who is not worried about paying their rent right now. And I think there are 62-year-old people in the audience or in our community who does worry about that. Am I going to pay for food, or am I going to pay my bills? And so I think this issue of economic diversity around the table is something that South Seattle and community at large really wants to hear. Lived experience is important, clearly, but there's change that comes in your livelihood as you get older.
Well, I'll just give you a specific example. I do have to correct the record. I'm not 62, but that's another story.
Correct the record.
Go
Go ahead.
There's a person I've known since I was 13 out there, and we're born on the exact same day. But I'll take 62.
67, I stand corrected.
Let me thanks for calling me out like that. I'm not 67 either. 66, Alicia. So today I've spent the morning talking to the mayor of Portland and the mayor of the governor on some issues. But I spent most of my morning with a young person that's in his less than 30 that is a renter who's been with me all day, and he keeps me in line to give me that perspective. So it's not as though I'm quite frankly, I'm sitting with people right now that are with me here today that are renters that do not make a lot of money. So I'm constantly around that perspective, if that's your point, and I value that perspective.
Thank you.
You want to move on, or you want to?
Move on.
All right. This question is for Katie Wilson. There's a playbook for handling crisis, but we're living through a time when the unimaginable seems to keep happening. Tell me about a time you had to think quickly on your feet to mobilize in response to a crisis.
Okay. The first thing that comes to mind is perhaps not a good idea for me to share, but I will. So back in 2018, we were running a campaign to tax big businesses to fund housing and shelter and homeless services. And Amazon freaked out, and they threatened to reconsider their development in Seattle if that tax went through. And that was for the campaign that I was running, that was a big emergency situation. And we flipped into gear, and we tried to stop a referendum that the big businesses funded to reverse that tax, and ultimately we lost that fight. But that was a real learning experience to me. It was an experience in definitely responding on the fly when kind of all hell broke loose. And that, I don't know, it was kind of trial by fire. And obviously that's nothing like, Trump coming into Seattle or something like that, but is the kind of situation where there were like 5 emergencies going on at the same time, 20 emergencies, and you had to react to every single one of them. And what I learned from that, I learned a lot of things from that, but one thing is that I'm a pretty steady hand in an emergency, and I can direct people in an emergency, and I can work with people in an emergency. Honestly, I think running a campaign's got a lot of the same elements to it. There's things going on all the time.
Thank you. I want to talk about building trust with communities of color. Your opponent has brought up that you're an outsider, no lived experience. How are you getting to know communities of color? How are you understanding that the diversity within communities of color, that we are not a monolith?
Yeah, this is a great question, and there's no doubt that I'm a middle-aged white lady, in the work that I've done in Seattle over the last 14 years, building coalitions, running campaigns, I have built a lot of relationships, including with organizations rooted in communities of color, led by communities of color. But I'm also very aware that I do not know everyone. I do not have all the relationships. I have not heard everyone's perspective and everyone's experience. And so part of what I have been doing in this campaign is trying to build as many of those relationships as possible, and especially going into communities where I don't have that pre-existing relationship based on work we've done in the past. And so I've been having a lot of great conversations with folks in different immigrant and refugee communities, Ethiopian community, the Somali community, Filipino community, and learning a ton from those conversations, right, and about the specific situations that people are in and their backgrounds. And obviously in immigrant communities right now, there's a ton of anxiety around ICE and around threats from the federal government. So there's a lot of different perspectives and histories, because some people have been here for generations, others have moved here just last year. But at the same time, there's a lot of commonality too, right? Like ultimately, all of us kind of want the same thing, right? Like we want to be safe. We want to have a city that we can afford to live in. We want to have a city where our children are safe and where they can grow up and be in community. And I'm committed, if I'm successful in this race, to continuing to build those relationships, especially with communities in Southeast Seattle. And I'm really hopeful in the change that we can make together in making this an affordable city for everyone, and a city where people are not continuing to be displaced, and where people actually have a voice and are heard and seen and actually have power in City Hall.
Quick follow-up. Can you name a South Seattle organization that you have started working with since you started the work that you just mentioned?
Yeah, there are a bunch. Let me think. Definitely, the Ethiopian community of Seattle, met with them a couple of times now and learned a lot more about their work. And, I think like the Equitable Development Initiative Fund and how essential that has been to them and to a lot of other organizations that have developed community assets. And I really want to make sure that that fund has funding moving forward.
Thank you. Mayor Harrell. So for me personally, black man, been in Seattle for generations, I've watched as generations of my own family have been pushed out of Seattle. What have you done, or what do you plan to do to ensure that people like me, black folks, people of color, are able to actually stay in the city?
Well, we recently announced, and we're the first city in the country to announce, a reparations package for the descendants of slaves, African Americans who are here, who are the victims of redlining and racial restrictive covenants. This would include down payment assistance, financial counseling perhaps, rental assistance perhaps, looking at the disparity studies. I mentioned earlier, when we talk about, when you say concepts like, my dad came from the Jim Crow South and came here and was redlined. I don't know if any of you have actually read those racial restrictive covenants. This had a real impact on your family and mine. And I know your family, of course. I coached your brother when he was just a toddler, right down here on these play fields. I'm from this community. So I'm blessed to be in this position, be able to advance that kind of policy. All of our policies have been anti-gentrification, inclusive. Here, when Trump is this idiotic president, talks about diversity and inclusion and equality as though these are bad things. He uses equity, he weaponizes these beautiful terms. My administration has modeled it in everything we've done. And I could go down the litany of laws we've passed, from the ban the box legislation and the stuff I mentioned earlier. But that is to protect our community. So our housing policies have been spot on, with laser focus, looking at the disparity studies to make sure that you can stay here. And people say this stuff. I've been working on housing issues. The fact is, my opponent has zero housing experience. That is just a fact. She's done nothing in housing. I have her resume here, nothing. And my concern is we go back, because we have momentum on our comp plan, which allows for 330,000 units. You look at the Fort Lawton, the Jackson Park. I could go through the different projects. $20 million in Northgate Commons, which is going to be able to keep families like yours here in place. So we've been very, very aggressive in this pursuit.
Same question, Katie?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. What would, if you were elected, what would you plan to do to make sure that black families can stay in Seattle?
Yeah, great question, because I was just about to reply to everything he said. So, so a number of things. So first of all, we've talked a little bit about social housing, and I'm a big supporter of social housing, but social housing will be a failure if it does not work for black families and black households. And so I think as we're developing social housing, getting the developer going, we have to be working in partnership with communities, with community organizations that can make sure that people have the opportunity, people in the black community have opportunity to move into that social housing. That's one thing. I also think that we need to invest more in affordable homeownership programs that are especially in Southeast Seattle and in the Central District that can keep people rooted in place and that can provide that opportunity for affordable homeownership. And part of that, you know, I know the mayor's come out with this reparations proposal, which I'm really looking forward to seeing more details, but you know, I know at the state level there's been a couple bills passed, including the Covenant Homeownership program, right, which is kind of down payment assistance, but one of the problems that I've heard as I've been talking to folks is that, and this was actually a conversation with Y. King and folks at Africa Town, that you have this program that helps with that down payment assistance, but black households, especially if you've been displaced from Seattle already, even with that assistance, you can't afford to buy the households that are here in Seattle anymore, right? So what can the city do to increase those affordable homeownership opportunities so that with that state program, people can actually afford to live in the community that their family was originally from?
You had a follow-up question.
This one?
Yes.
Gotcha. Back to you, Katie. So literally this morning, I got a press release from your opponent accusing your campaign of darkening his image in a campaign ad. What is your response to this accusation?
The simple response is that we didn't create that image.
Okay.
Did not create the image.
Is she acknowledging that that occurred? I mean, it occurred, number one. I actually have a picture of it somewhere, and that's the common tactic to darken my image in a regular picture to make me look ominous, okay? And because it's done on your behalf, I would think that we asked for an apology and asked you to take it down. Now, I think that's the responsible thing to do. So, I mean, in all due respect to how this is going, I actually love this forum. You guys are taking your time to exercise democracy here. But I'll say it. She should take that tactic down, because that's happened to other politicians. It's a common tactic to make a person of color look ominous by darkening the image. And like I said, I'll take hits, I'll take criticisms. I'm far from perfect, but that's not how we should do things here in Seattle. So I would ask that my opponent make a public statement to stop that.
So you're saying there is a darkened image on her website?
Someone gave it to me, so I think they have it. I don't know if it's on her website.
Because if she takes it down, I'm hearing that she has control over her website or her materials
It's
in
not
order
on
for
our
her to
website.
take it down.
So I don't think it's on her website. It's done on behalf of some volunteers on her campaign, as I understand it. Would you like to see it?
We've seen it. It's in our emails. Do you want to respond or do you want to move on?
I would like to move on.
I want to talk about workplace culture, Mayor Harrell. There have been allegations that there's a toxic workplace culture. These allegations have said that there has been a boys' club environment from several women, including your own niece. Directors have resigned in scandal. This is a two-part question. How do you create a healthy work environment? And how do you hold other directors accountable, acknowledging a problem before it snowballs into something greater? What would you have done differently in regards to Chief Adrian Diaz?
A few things. Number one is whenever anyone gives feedback, even my niece, we take the feedback, we don't judge the feedback, and we take it to get better. So perception is someone's reality. Under our administration, the fact is we have the lowest turnover rate in over 40 years. The fact of the matter is that people enjoy working for my administration. I have 14,000 employees. I make a lot of hiring decisions. We will not get it right every single time. So when we heard that feedback, we brought in consultants. We sat down with everyone and said, let us know your understanding. We have some if you look at Justin Farrell, who's a deputy mayor, you look at Tiffany Washington, who's a deputy mayor, look at Aisha Foster, who's a Rainier Beach graduate, who's our chief people officer, our human resources. These are empowered leaders. And we asked them, help us fix the system. Adrian Diaz was a friend of mine doing community work out here in the South End. I did a national search. He was the acting chief when I hired him. It broke my heart to have to terminate his employment for dishonesty. But that was a decision I had to make. So the short answer, now that I've given a long answer, is we learn, we try to get better. But the people that work in my administration, they love working for it because they're doing good work. They believe they're doing the public service work that they are meant to do. And we have a phenomenal executive team and cabinet. And that's, we should be proud of that. We've done national searches, we've done local searches, we've got some really good talent in our office.
This is a question I always love. I love hiring people, and I love talking to people in job interviews. So here's my favorite question. Tell me about a mistake and what you learned from it.
That's right.
Mayor Harrell.
Okay, no, I was just having fun with it. A mistake, first of all, I got to tell you, my mistakes, I tell my executive team, it's just a different way of doing things, and I learn. So one of the mistakes that I have, I think when I first took office, was that was at the tail end of the defund movement. And we had officers in our SDOT department writing tickets. And they were unauthorized tickets. And we did not know. And we had to refund over $5 million worth of tickets. And we did not commission them. Maybe we could have done better. Maybe we could have asked the right questions. We didn't blame anybody. They've been writing tickets for months and months, and it cost all of you $5 million worth of tax dollars. So perhaps we could have been smarter on that issue. We could have asked different questions. But we fixed the problem, and we moved on.
Katie Wilson, a mistake you've made and what you've learned.
Yeah, this is a great question, and I'm actually going to go back to when you asked about an emergency, and I talked about the head tax fight of 2018. So I think over the years, and even after that fight, in how the kind of progressives and the left have addressed the homelessness crisis, I think that there's there's a lot of truth in the kind of narrative that we were using at that time, which was really focused on homelessness is a housing problem, right? We need more housing. That is the solution, and we need more funding. And the reason why homelessness keeps rising and rising is because we're not making the investments that we need to make, especially in affordable housing. And we kind of spun this narrative, but I think often hesitated to talk in a really realistic way about drugs and about mental illness and about the ways that those crises were intertwined with homelessness. And part of the result of that was that our narrative stopped resonating or failed to resonate with kind of everyday people as they were walking around the streets in Seattle and seeing people in crisis, people who were, clearly addicted to drugs or, mental and suffering from mental illness, right? And that, I think, contributed to a kind of backlash, which we're still seeing on the right, where they're saying homelessness is not a housing problem, right? Homelessness is just about drugs, it's just about mental illness, and pushing a narrative which really criminalizes homelessness and blames homeless people themselves for the situation that they're in. And so I, over a period of years, did a lot of reflection on why this backlash had occurred and what we who consider ourselves progressives had kind of done to fail to tell a story and propose solutions that resonated with the majority of the population. And out of that reflection came an article that I wrote in The Stranger very early this year, which was really kind of a self-critique as much as a critique of others in the kind of progressive left space. So that's something, that kind of reflection I think is so important because, and that's, I think informed the approach that I'm now taking, right, when I think about the homelessness crisis and I talk about the homelessness crisis. And I think it's been a really productive public conversation as well as something that I was kind of doing internally in my own mind.
Thank you. Quick time check. We have about 10 minutes left, 8 minutes left. I have a question that is from our friends at the Royal Room. I'm going to paraphrase it. I will start with you, Katie Wilson, and we'll let Mayor Harrell go second. The World Cup is going to come to Seattle. We know that the downtown, the waterfront, Seattle Center, they're going to be taken care of. What will you do to ensure that cultural institutions in the South End, like the one we're sitting in, will also get a piece of pie when all the tourists come in for the World Cup?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I'm actually very excited about the World Cup coming. Soccer's kind of like my sport, so I'm very excited about this. I think part of this is what is the city doing to promote neighborhoods around the city, especially in the South End, Black-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses around the city, and making sure that we are trying to direct tourists so that they're not just staying in the hotels next to the stadium and watching the game, but they're actually getting out into the city. They are experiencing the culture, experiencing the history, learning about the history, right? And so I think the city can do a lot on that front to basically advertise to the people coming here. Like, let's make like a tour where like you should visit these neighborhoods, like get your card stamped, right? Like let's give some kind of incentive for people to get out into the city and learn about the city and patronize the businesses. So I think we can do that. And the other thing I would say is, I'm still getting into the weeds on all of the World Cup planning, but if there are contracting opportunities for providing food, for providing other services like to the games, how can we make sure that those contracting opportunities are getting out to businesses, to small businesses, to minority-owned businesses across the city so that they're also benefiting from this and it's not just a one-off event that only benefits that downtown core.
Thank you. Mayor Harrell, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I'll answer it. Remember we had the Major League All-Star game here. So in order to host it, what I was able to negotiate was to get a $2 million investment right here. The most diverse zip code we have in 98118 right here. So we had $2 million investment. With FIFA, we're doing the same kinds of things. We're making sure that capital investments, the black media, small businesses here, they actually, under our Office of Economic Development plans, are intersecting, interfacing with the FIFA organizers, the local organizing committee, to make sure they are participating. We measure it. I put out an executive order on this issue. Under our leadership, we have programs such as the Liberty Project, where we are taking the University of Washington students, grad students, Seattle universities, and the Albert School, and Tabor 100, which was like a small black chamber of commerce, if you will, to combine their research to do strategic planning, social media, HR planning, and we're using that efforts for the FIFA games to make sure they're integrating. So this is work that we're doing. And I would suggest that in the question where she talked about what you do for black people, the Social Housing Corporation is not for black people. It's for median income, 120%. Your question was on black folks. The EDI initiative, I vice-chaired that committee. That's not for black people. That's for people, underrepresented groups. And it's very important to have this conversation because a politician, all over the map and flip-flopping on positions. I try to be direct. Gets me in trouble sometimes, but I'm very direct about this job. And with Trump, we're going to need a leader that is direct, articulate, powerful, because of the idiocy and the mean-spiritedness we're seeing coming from the White House. And with that, I hope you realize why I'm running for a second term.
Thank you, Royal Room and arts leaders, for asking that question. What is the last cultural activity you've done in the city?
Well, I know I got criticized as going to the Husky game this morning. I just left it. I say the last cultural thing, probably, well, the one that I enjoyed, it wasn't the last one, but I went to a play, The Wiz, put on by students, African-American students. It was just phenomenal, the talent that they had. And that was at Mayoral Hall, by the way, so they got a chance to use one of our facilities, and it was just outstanding talent that we have coming from our Seattle Public Schools here.
We had a beautiful photo essay in the South Seattle Emerald, in case you want to recap that show. Katie Wilson, last cultural activity you've done in the city?
I don't know if this is the last one, but what immediately popped to mind was going to a Somali Independence Day earlier this year down in Rainier Beach. And it was really fun, and everyone was dressed up, and there was music and dancing.
Thank you.
Perfect.
And there was a camel. There was a camel, which my daughter really enjoyed.
There was a camel.
Yes.
For the last question, I want to ask about leadership. One of the qualities of a great leader is being able to work with people that you don't always agree with. So in that spirit, I would like each of you to say something positive about your opponent. And I'll start with you, Mayor Harrell.
I have no doubt at all, I would call you Miss Wilson, although you said I could call you Katie. I'll call you Miss Wilson. I have no doubt that Katie Wilson's not an outstanding human being. I have no doubt that she is smart. She is hardworking, and I believe she cares about this community. I don't doubt that for a minute. And I think she's a kind person, too. I just think I'm better at being an executive. But I have no doubt that she's what I'll call a virtuous human being.
Thank you. Katie Wilson.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really respect Mayor Harrell's long service and also deep roots in the community. And I think that he has really genuine relationships with so many folks in Seattle, so many communities, and really cares about their history and about how people are doing now and about their future. And I believe that that's genuine.
Thank you both.
I learned you were a Sounders fan at a different event, and I know you are a Seahawks fan. The question was asked, if you had to pick your favorite sports team. I am a Mariners fan. And I just want to know what your walk-up song would be.
I'm old school. My walk-up song is the same thing for everything I do. That's the way of the world by Earth, Wind, and Fire. It's got to be my walk-up song.
This is the kind of question where my mind goes blank. Like, I just don't even know.
When you remember or know or come up,
I'll
tell
let you
us,
know.
and we'll share it on social media.
Okay, great.
On behalf of the South Seattle Emerald and the Royal Room, this is a new partnership for us, and maybe it could become a thing. It is really nice to be in community here in the South End, which we all know is the best part of Seattle. I want to, again, thank each and every one of you for joining us today, for participating in democracy. Please remember to vote. Please remember to support the Royal Room. You can check out their online calendar. You can also tell all your friends about the Royal Room. I see a hand raised. We're not taking, we're at time. It's 2:59.
I just want to say that I appreciate the debate. I appreciate the questions a lot. I do have a cognitive dissonance that we brushed over what's going on in the country very briefly, and that the country is in crisis. As an immigrant, as queer, as a woman, I can tell you
I understand that question, and I apologize, but we are out of time. I'm going to have that question. I'm going to get the answers, and we're going to share it on social media.
This is a very important
That-
question. How the future mayor is going to defend its citizens from the authoritarian regime that is
I,
taking over the country.
I understand your question. Thank you. We know there are a lot of questions. We just wanted to honor and respect the time limit that we have here. I wanted to thank you all. Please vote. And this was a free event. And the only way that we can make this happen is because of donations and your support. So on your way out, I ask you to pick up one of these wonderful South Seattle Emerald stickers, and you can learn a little bit about supporting us. Thank you very much, too. Carol, thank you, Katie Wilson. Thank you, Mike Davis and the staff of the Royal Room and the South Seattle Emerald. We appreciate you. Good.